talk to you today about doing toe up socks, 2 at a time. That's a tongue twister. I really like to do cuff down. That's super fun also, but I found that even the stretchiest cast on is not quite as good as the stretchiest bind off I've found, which is the sewn bind off in rib. That's absolutely my favorite one, which means you have to start the socks from the toe up. Also, I like toe up because once you start from the toe and then you do the heel, and then basically if you divide your yarn into 2 balls, you can basically go until you run out of yarn. So that way you're pretty much ensured that you never run out. If you start from cuff down, there's kind of yarn chicken if you're playing with the toe, if you want to try to use all the yarn. So it's pretty awesome. Again, this is a little fiddly to get started, but it's not any more painful than the cuff down one is painful. I'm using size 0s in this video, and I'm using a 40-inch size 0 circular needle so that we can do 2 at a time on magic loop. Here we go. So you can see I am zoomed in here quite a bit because I'm using such small needles. I wanted to be accurate and not use larger needles because I want you to see how fiddly and painful this can be, even for people who do it all the time. All right, so the first thing you want to do is you want to take your needles and you want to put them together just like this. Okay, so I'm going to separate mine a little bit. All right, now I'm going to grab some yarn here. And there's an important factor here. This is going to be your tail. When you do this cast on, you want your tail to be away from you. So I like to sing this little song to myself. Come tail away, come tail away, come tail away with me. Now you won't forget. Okay, so I'm going to take my 2 pincher fingers, burp, 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 and I'm going to kind of put this yarn over the top of my pincher fingers. See, the tail is still away, it's over here, but I'm going to grab everything. I need a little more yarn. I can get a little bit of a tail there. Okay, so here we go. My tail is going this way away from me, and my working yarn is coming toward me. So the first thing we need to do is we need to put a loop over this top needle, okay, but we want to put a twist in it. So I'm going to, holding my needles, I'm going to rotate them like this so they're pointed the same direction as my fingers. Then I'm going to take that top needle and I'm going to slip it under the yarn just like that, okay, so only the top needle is underneath the yarn, and then I'm just going to twist like this. Okay, so now we've got our first loop. Now I'm going to go ahead and put these together. It makes it a little difficult because every time we put a stitch on, we're going to start from outside of the needle, go over the top of the needle and between the 2. So there's not a lot of space between the tips of those needles, so you just have to go nice and careful. The last thing that you want to remember before you do this is that the yarn on the bottom here is going to go over the top needle. The yarn on the top over here is going to go onto the bottom needle. So that'll kind of help prevent you from getting confused as to what goes where. Let me just get my fingers back in here. Okay, we already have a stitch on the top. We now need one on the bottom. So this guy right here has to go onto the bottom. So we're going to swing underneath the needles. We're going to go over the top of just that needle and between the 2 needles like that to add a stitch. There's one right there. Okay, back into regular position. Now we have to put another one up here. So I'm going to swing this one underneath the needles, and I'm going to go over the top of that needle and down between the 2. Now we have a second stitch here. Okay, so now I need another one on the bottom. That means I'm going to take the top yarn, swing it underneath, and get it right on that needle like that. All right, so now we have 2 each. Now in my particular sock pattern, I need 6 stitches on each needle. So I have 2 here and 2 here. Okay, so now I need one on the top. So I'm going to take this yarn on the bottom, go underneath, over the top between the 2. Then I'm going to take this one here, swing underneath, over the top between the 2. Now I need one on the top, so I'm going to swing underneath the needles, over the top between the 2. Now I need one on the bottom, so I'm going to take the top yarn, swing underneath, go between the 2, just like that. Now I've got 4. I need 2 more on each. Okay, so bottom goes underneath everything, over the top of the top needle and through. Top one, underneath everything, over the top of the bottom needle and through. I need one more, so I need to start on the top, which means I need the bottom thread. goes over this way, and then this one goes underneath all, just like that. All right, there we go. We have our little provisional cast on here, which is 6 stitches, okay, on each needle. Fantastic. Now, this is all like super loose and a little bit crazy. Now, normally what you would do is you would slide this down and you would do another one of these with a second ball of yarn right here to get your 2 at a time, but that is just too fiddly for me. So we're going to go do 1 round on this one to secure it before we move on to the second ball of yarn. So now what we're going to do is you don't want to turn it around or over or anything like that. Just hold it like this. Then you're going to slowly rotate the whole thing so that your needles are pointed to the right. Okay, so there we go. Now, the other thing I want to do, you can see this is my tail right here. Okay, let me just bring this on camera. That's my tail. It's just like hanging here, but that's a stitch. It needs to stay there. So what I like to do is I like to take the tail and I'm going to swing it down underneath here, and I'm going to hold all of that with my fingers. That is going to keep this stitch nice and tight. Okay? Now we are ready to knit across the first row. Okay? So my yarn is on this, let's see here. Oh, my tail is this back one, so this is the first one. All right, so here we go. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm good to go. Now I just want to slide everything this way because I need to start knitting, okay? And let me just pull this thread here really quick. Now, this is obviously, it's very, very fiddly. So you just want to go slow and be patient. Once you get your first round done, you will be extremely a lot happier. Okay, so now we want to knit through this first stitch on the back needle. So I'm going to very slowly pull this front needle out so that it is on the cable, just like this. See how that's happening? Okay. All right. So I'm going to pull a nice long loop. I'm going to bring this a little closer to the camera here. Now I'm going to go in that first stitch, which is actually my tail. Remember, I'm holding it underneath. So I want to hold it nice and tight, and I want to knit this guy. Oops. Let me go through here. So go through here, and I want to yarn over, and I want to knit this guy. Just like that. Now I'm going to just push this needle down a little bit like this. Okay, thankfully the first instruction is just to knit all the way across. So now I'm going to get under this guy, just like that. Go under here, knit. Get this next guy, go under here, knit. Get this next guy. I mean, seriously, I mean, go slow, nice and slow. I mean, it's easy to start over from here, but God, it's like it's painful to get all those stitches the right way. So if you just do 1 stitch at a time and make sure all your extra fingers are just holding everything in place. See how under my thumb I have this last stitch? I'm like holding it there so it doesn't go anywhere. Okay, get this last stitch. Whew, okay, half the battle is over. All right, there we go. Yeah, that's your toe. Right, Aurora, what are you teaching me? All right, so now we're gonna flip it around again. We are not gonna turn it over, flip it, or anything. We're just gonna rotate, 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 rotate. All right, great. Now we need to knit across these top stitches here. So I'm going to push, 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 until you get the needle through the stitches. Okay, very good. Now, this one is what we're going to knit across, and we need this bottom one, so I'm just going to very carefully hold on to everything. Pinch, pinch, pinch. You're the boss. You tell that yarn where to go. And pull this needle out until I'm ready to work with it. Okay, so let me find my working yarn. Now, this second needle is going to be slightly different, and you can immediately see why. This is my first stitch right here. Let me get a little closer. Get my finger back there. This is my first stitch right here. If I go through here and I knit it, look how big that hole is going to be. So the second needle, you have to knit through the back loop. All right? So talk about adding insult to injury. Make it even more fiddly. So now I'm going to kind of go think of. So actually, I can't even get back there. So I'm going to go like this and go over the top to get my needle in the back. So I can either go back here and try to get it through the back. Oops, see, I got the stitch next to it. That's kind of hard. Or I can just stick it in the front and sort of go over, look, and now I'm through the back loop. All right, so I'm going to get back there. This is my working yarn. I'm going to give it a nice little tug to tighten everything up, and then I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to knit that first stitch through the back loop. And then I'm going to slowly, slowly get that guy out of there while holding everything else. Okay, yay. Now, you can see now, see this stitch here? It's twisted. If you're a right-handed knitter, your right leg should be in the front. It's in the back. So now it's obvious and will be much easier to knit through the back loops. All right, so I'm in there. I'm gonna knit through that back loop, just like that. And then I'm gonna knit through the next back loop. Now it's easy because of the way you do this cast on. You cannot prevent these stitches from being twisted. It's just the way it is. So you just have to knit them through the back loop in order to make it work. Last one. Okay, perfect. All right, I'm gonna get this needle in here and let's see what we did. Look how perfect that is. You literally have knitting in the middle and you're working from both ends now. See how perfect those stitches are? Now, if you would have just knit this second needle worth of stitches as they were, it's fine. They would have been twisted. So if you want to be anal like me, then you knit them through the back loop. But we've got perfectly knitted stitches on both sides and we've got live loops on both ends. That is fascinating and awesome. Okay, now we're going to add the second one in there. Okay, so now we're going to turn this back around. We're going to rotate, and I'm going to get this guy back on the needle, and I'm going to pull this one up like this, because remember, we're going to need this for our second one. Okay, so I'm going to pull this ball aside. I'm going to pull this one in. Okay. Sorry, I'm kind of working off camera here because I'm zoomed in so much. So, all right, tail away. Come tail away, come tail away, come tail away with me. Okay, so again, here's our two needles. All we did was rotate, okay? So this is always facing up. And you can tell this is your work. Otherwise, it looks like pearls on the back, obviously. Let's turn it over so we can see without trying to bump my camera. See all the pearls on the back? That's not the right side. This is the right side. All right, so here we go. Right side facing up. This is actually your top needle here. So when you turn it like this to match your fingers, you're going to slip this one underneath just like that. Okay. Then you're going to do a little twist. Sorry, my cable's in the way. It will move. Perfect. All right. So we know how to do this. We've got one on the top. That means we need the top yarn to go to the bottom. Top yarn goes to the bottom, over and in. Bottom yarn goes to the top, over and in. Oops, I do not have a long enough tail. Look at that. Hang on. Do over. Here we go. Let's get this one in there. All right, perfect. All right, top yarn goes to the bottom, over and in. Bottom yarn goes to the top, over and in. Top yarn goes to the bottom, over and in. Bottom yarn goes to the top, over and in. Top to bottom, bottom to top. Top to bottom, bottom to top, top to bottom, bottom to top, top to bottom. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, got them all on there. Let me pull some yarn out of the way here. Okay, we're going to gently rotate, 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 rotate. Okay, we're ready to knit, but let's catch that tail. here's my tail. See that loose stitch? Nerdy, let's hang on to it because we don't want that to ruin our day. All right, so I'm hanging on to that. Here's my live yarn over here, hanging onto the tail. I'm going to take the bottom needle because I'm hanging onto the tail. That's the first stitch. I'm hanging onto it. I want to knit that stitch first, so I'm going to grab this bottom needle, pull it out, go into here. Okay, and now I'm going to knit across. Did I get it? I always have a problem getting into that first stitch. I always have to do it twice. There we go. Once I pull on that live yarn, then everything straightens out, and then I'm like, wait a sec, I'm not even in the right place. Okay, so now this is the first needle. Woo, now as I'm knitting off camera, this is the first needle, so we are going to knit across each piece just like this. Each stitch, there we go. Okay, now we're ready to knit across the bottom, except for we have another sock over here. Now this one has already been knitted across, so all you're going to do is just slip across these stitches. Okay, so I'm going to pull my needle there. There it is. All I'm going to do is just pass one to the other. Because when you're doing 2 at a time socks, you always want both socks to be on the exact same row, except for this one is ahead by an entire row, right? So we just want to slip that one. Okay, there's our 2 toes. Now again, rotate. Ta-da! I'm gonna go in, just like this. Push it until it's done. Burp, burp, beep. And then we're gonna hold this one and burp, burp, beep. All right, so now we're on both again. Okay, so now you're looking at it, and you're always gonna pull the bottom needle out. Okay, so again, this one's already done. P.S. Your live yarn is way over here, so you can't knit across this anyway. That should remind you that you're just going to slip because this one is a row ahead. So you're going to pull this out. You're going to get this right here, and then you're just going to slip these like this. So you're going to go slip a 1, slip a 2, slip a 3, and a 4, and a 5, and a 6. All right, now we are on the back side of the second one. I'm going to slide this one up. Okay, now you can see how everything's kind of getting, we're going to just pull a little bit like this. Okay, now remember, this is the second one. See this big old hole? That should remind you. See that? You don't want to knit through that. You want to knit through the back of that. So we're going to just go in carefully through the back loop. Okay, once you're in there, then you can grab your live yarn and give it a nice little tug, and that will just snug everything right up. We're going to knit, this guy through the back loop, pull the needle down, very carefully slip it off while holding everything else. Okay, and now we're going to knit the rest of this needle through the back loop, just like this. All the way to the end. All right, now both of these are at the same level. We've done a row on both. Here's my live yarn for this one. Here's my live yarn for this one. My 2 tails are both down here. Okay, so these are absolutely identical. And if I stretch them out a little bit, you can see the cute little stitches in there. So now we're ready to do both. So this next part is the increases. So the increases that I prefer to do on socks is a knit front back when I do the increases, because it's really hard to do like a make one right, make one left, although that's possible. But it's really hard to find the stitch below to scoop it up on these teeny tiny fiddly little needles. So I'm going to demonstrate how to do the knit front back on the increases. Okay, so now we're going to just flip it around like this, and we're going to shove this needle in here on the top, and then we're going to pull the bottom one out. So I always like to spin my needle a little bit like this to get these on. It makes it easier. Okay, there we go. All right, so now I'm going to get this close to the tip here, like that. Now I'm going to pull this needle out. just like this, and I'm going to knit across the top. So now I'm on round 2. Well, let me make sure which one is my tail, because that's the worst. I'm sure you've all done that. Okay, so we are going to knit front back the very first stitch, okay? So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and knit this one, but I'm not going to pull this part of the stitch off this needle. Instead, I'm going to hold this stitch, I'm going to go around, and I'm going to shove my needle through the back side of the same loop. See that? Ta-da! And then I'm going to knit it like that. And that is going to give me 2 stitches out of 1. See, there's my 2, even though I've only worked 1 stitch. So I'm going to slip that one off. Now I'm going to knit until the end, except at the, whoops, you see I totally whiffed on that one. Fiddly. There we go. You can't do it on the last stitch or it leaves it looking kind of weird. So what you do is you knit to the second to the last stitch. See this guy? You always knit the last stitch. So you're going to do an increase, but you're not going to do it until this dude right here. So we're on the second to last stitch. So I'm going to go in like this, and I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to knit that guy, but then I'm going to hold this guy, and I'm going to come around and go into the back like this. Okay, back loop, fantastic. Go like this, and I'm going to go like that, and then I'm going to knit my last stitch, just like that. Okay, all right, so I've gotten across half around on this first sock. Now it's time to do the next sock. You're up, buddy. All right, so let's slide this one out of the way. And I'm going to go ahead and get in here. Now it's the first stitch on the needle. Okay, is this my live yarn? Yes, it is. So I'm going to knit front back this guy. So I'm going to knit this guy, and then I'm going to hold this guy in place and put my needle through the back loop, just like that. This will increase and give me 2 stitches. I'm going to slowly slide that one out. Then I'm going to knit all the way across. Oops, got a little bit in there. Until my second to last stitch. There it is. I'm going to knit front back in this guy. Here we go. And through the back loop there. It's a little bit of knitting acrobatics on size 0 needles with the smallest yarn they ever made. I need some reading glasses. All right, there we go. So now we've got this row done. So this needle has more stitches than the needle below it. So now we have to rotate, 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 rotate. Shove, 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 shove. Squiggle, 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 and then squiggle, 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 squiggle. Okay. Now we're going to do the same thing here. Get rid of my tail. Don't mess with me, tail. All right. Again, we're going to see, and this is now you can tell, this is the one we've already knit across. So we're going to knit across this one. So we're going to pull the bottom needle out. We're going to go into this guy, just like this. Whoa! As I hit my camera in the middle of a segment. Hang on, let me straighten. Stand by. Okay, now you're going to get seasick because it's going to wobble. Okay, so now we're going to take this back stitch. We're going to go this one. This is what you get when you try to knit super close to the camera. And then through the back loop. All right, great. Ta-da, 2. All right, all the way across this one. Okay, second to the last stitch, so I'm going to knit front back, knit in the front loop, go through the back loop, knit through the back loop, and then knit this guy. All right, so we're almost there. We have one more toe to knit across. That's this guy over here. I'm going to slide the needle down in here. I'm going to go into my first stitch. Then I'm going to KFB, knit front back. Whoopsies. Slide this guy down a little more. There we go. Find my live yarn. Here it is. Okay. I'm going to go over and I'm going to do the knit. And then I'm going to knit through the back loop right there. And pull it nice and tight once I'm around both. That way it'll snug it up next to the cable because the thread was down here on this stitch. So I'm going to pull this off. All right, so I've made 2, and then I'm going to knit all the way across to my second to last stitch. Okay, there it is. And now I'm going to do a knit front back. I'm going to go like this, and I go through the back loop, and I'm going to knit this guy, and then I'm going to knit this one. Whew. Oh my gosh, we made it through. It's a miracle. All right, there we go. Now we have increased each one by 2. You are going to continue in this manner. The next row, which is, let's see, an odd row, you're just going to knit, and an even row, you're going to increase. So your toe is going to start to go like this, and you're going to keep increasing until you have enough stitches on the needle to start the sock. So I'm going to go ahead and race ahead and do all of my increases, and then I will meet you when it's time to do the tube for the foot. Okay, I'm not all the way done yet, but I want to jump in here because I have a little hint I want to tell you about. So I've doubled my stitches. I've gone from 6 to 12. Look at my little teeny toes. They are so cute. So you can see it's starting to come together really nicely. Now, I have been using my tail as my end of round marker, but you can see that now that you've got some stitches, these are turning into little pouches instead of being flat like they were before. And my tail is just kind of coming out, and it's kind of difficult for me to tell what side it's coming out of. Now you can see by my thumb that this is teeny tiny, and it's very difficult to get a stitch marker like over here where the end of round is. It's hard to work around that stitch marker. So here's what I like to do. Oops, I don't want to slide that off. I'm trying to slide this one down. So I'm going to move my working yarn out of the way. I like to take my tail. So this, you can tell my tail is coming from this part. So this side is my end of round. And I'm just going to hang it over the side here like this. So I'm going to stick it between the needles like this and hang it out the side. Okay. Now I'm going to take this one and I'm going to do the same thing. This one's easier. I just put it between the needles and I hang it out the side. So what's going to happen now is as I knit around, this tail is now going to be hanging out the side of my sock forever. I obviously will put a darning needle on it and stick it back in and weave in the end when I'm all done, but now I've got a permanent end of round that's hanging outside of my sock so that as I go around, I'll always know where my end of round is. So that's a neat little trick that I use. It's also incredibly lazy, or some people would say efficient. Okay, so now I'm going to race ahead until I have the amount of stitches that I need for my size on both needles, and I'll show you what this little tail looks like as your end of round marker, and I'll also show you what your finished toe looks like. Okay, I'm all done with my toe. I have, let's see, the size I'm making says I need to have 32 stitches on each needle for a total of 64 stitches around. So let's take a look at what we did. All right, so here are my adorable little toes. Oh, they're so cute. And I'm now ready to just start working in the round for the foot part. So there is one thing that I wanted to point out to you. First of all, you can see here, here's my tail sticking out of the side. Now obviously I'll go weave that in, but it'll stick out through the whole of the sock, so I always know that once I get to the end of this side of the sock that this is my end of round. So that makes it pretty easy to decide. You can't really put an end of round marker here because it'll fall off this side, so this is nice that you always have one that's right here that you know is where your end of round is. Now, when we did the increases, I'm not sure how close I can get without going blurry. So we do a knit one, we do a knit front back, right, which makes one knit stitch here, and then it makes one that looks like a purl stitch, okay? Then we knit all the way across, and then we wait before we get to the end so that we do another knit one, knit front back. So this way, here's the knit, and then here's the knit front. This is the knit back, makes the purl, and then we do one more. So this would look weird if we did it on the last stitch because this purl would be hanging out and sticking out over here, but also now we have a row right here of knits, and then this one is the purl stitch that comes from the knit front back. So it is a mirror image over here when you do the knit front back. Does that make sense? So you have to have the extra one on the end where you do a knit front back, and then knit 1. That way it gives you that border and it gives you a mirror image so that you have exactly the same, you've got, you know, exactly the same sides here on the increase, so they are identical, which is absolutely lovely. A lot of people ask me when they are using double pointed needles or when they're doing magic loop, how to prevent the laddering of the yarn on the side between the needles. And I have a little hint for you, so I'm going to show you that now. So this guy here, I'm doing magic loop on this one here. And so sometimes there tends to be a gap between this needle and this cable. And you can see here that if I show this to you, there isn't a gap. It's nice and tight right in here, okay? So those two knits they're real close together. So here's how I do that. This also works with double pointed needles, so either you have a cable here or you have a double pointed needle here. It doesn't really matter which. So if you're just doing a knit, you're going to take this one. Now this is way over here, so you can already see the gap that this is going to create. So you're going to go ahead and knit the one and then slip it off. And then what I like to do is I'm going to pull on this here so that it really snugs this needle and the stitch that I made, it really snugs it up to your previous needle or to the cable in this case, okay? Then you can keep knitting and that whoosh, gap has been closed. So if you're doing these socks like I am, and you do an increase with a knit front back, that becomes a little more complicated. So here's how I execute that one. So I'm going to just go ahead and execute my knit. And then I have to do, I knit the front, so now I have to knit the back. And you can see how there's a nice big gap right here. So that's going to be a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the back, and I'm going to get ready to do my yarn over, but I'm not going to do my yarn over yet. Instead, I'm going to pull. Now there's still a gap. See where my original stitches, and here's my new stitch. There's still quite a big gap there. So what I'm going to do is I will even kind of fold this over and then pull this piece of yarn to cinch the current needle to the other needle or to the cable in this case. Once I have that down, now I can yarn over and I can finish my knit front back just like that. And that is how you suck up that piece right there so that they're nice and tight together. And that is the last thing you need to know on how to do 2 at a time toe up socks. So now all you have to do is pick a pair of socks and go for it. Have fun!